Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and man, I really appreciate you guys checking out the video today and spending some time with me. And I think you're going to be glad you did, guys, because we got a really good video today. We're going to be talking about everything about shaky head fishing. Shaky head fishing is probably my favorite way to catch bass with finesse techniques. And depending upon how you set up a shaky head, it can be really finessey or not so finessey. And in my opinion, the best shaky head fishing of the year is during the pre-spawn, the spawn, and the post-spawn coming up. So I sort of want to give you guys a tutorial today on everything about shaky head fishing. I'm going to talk about the little tricks and tips that I've learned over the years, things that help me. And I'm pretty confident by the time you get done with this video, you're going to come away with a completely new understanding about shaky head fishing and catch more bass on it than you ever have. Because shaky head fishing, it's all about, you can catch good fish on it, but it's about numbers. You can catch a ton of fish on it under the right conditions. So we got a lot of good information to cover in today's video. Also, guys, a couple quick housekeeping tips before we get started. Just wanted to invite everybody to please hit that subscribe button here at Intuitive Angling. We're really pushing hard to get to 150,000 subscribers right now. Also, please check out my Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns if you want to get prepped for this spring fishing. We got our spring maps on the website. These are maps I build for Fish the Moment that real good resource to learn more about your favorite lake. And finally, we got 30% off, guys, right now on my Solar Bat Signature Series sunglasses. Got a New Year's sale on them. So I'll put the Solar Bat link in the description if you'd like to pick a pair of my RB2 and RB3 glasses. I really appreciate that. And I do appreciate you guys, listening to those plugs, guys. I know they get irritating, but it's just sort of part of YouTube, Okay, let's get into this. We're got a lot to cover here. I'm gonna talk about the baits, how I like to rig them up, the tackle, and the type of areas I like to fish them in today's video. Now, first of all, guys, there's three soft plastics that I use for my shaky head fishing. And 98% of the time, these are the three that I use right here. And we're gonna talk about that. And also, guys, I'm gonna link everything that I talk about here in my tackle warehouse link in the description. If you guys wanna pick up my shaky head setup, you can use that link there. Okay, the first one, let's go over the baits, and then we'll talk a little bit about the heads and how to rig them. The first one, and probably the one I use more than anything else, is a Zoom trick worm. You can't go wrong with this, guys. A Zoom trick worm is probably the best lure to throw on a shaky head of all time. The larger trick worm size catches good fish, it catches numbers of fish, really, really good bait. I do like the trick worm a little bit more, probably in the pre-spawn and right around the spawn when that water's in the 55 to 65 degrees. And most of the time I'm using either some type of a watermelon or green pumpkin color, just natural color. Okay, my next one is the same thing, but smaller. It's a Zoom finesse worm. The finesse worm is 4.5 inches long and the trick worm is close to 7 inches long. Now, the time that I use the finesse worm is really if I'm fishing a lake that has a good population of spotted bass in it. Spotted bass, a lot of times they prefer the little bit shorter worm. So all you guys that are fishing like Lake Lanier in Georgia or some of the Tennessee lakes or even some of the Ozark lakes here in Missouri, Lake Norman in North Carolina, a little 4-inch model is going to get you a lot of bites. And you can catch largemouth on it too. I'm not saying you can't, but the 4-inch for me, sort of a situation where spotted bass is more prevalent and also done under the tougher fishing conditions. Let's say that you're out there and it's a bluebird day, there's no wind, water's really clear, the fish are finicky, maybe they're getting a lot of fishing pressure, a little 4-inch is gonna get you some good bites. And finally, the one that I use pretty much throughout the pre-spawn before the fish start spawning is a soft plastic stick bait. This is a Zoom Zlinky, and the difference between the two is the Zlinky is a larger diameter. It's a larger, more bulkier profile. And I found that during the pre-spawn, when that water is in the mid to upper 50s, I catch a lot of good fish on the Zlinky here. It works really, really good on a shaky head. A lot of people throw it on a wacky, but I like to throw it on a shaky. So those are my three, primary lures. And like I said, color-wise, guys, probably, 80, 90% of the time, I'm throwing some type of a natural color, again, like the green pumpkin or watermelon with some different flake in it. Occasionally, if the water is a little bit more off-colored, say you got water visibility of about 2 foot or so, and you still feel they're going to bite a shaky head, then I'll go to a solid black trick worm. The black can be a really good color on a shaky head, especially during the post-spawn. Now the next thing is the head. The head is critical, guys. And this, I'm telling you guys right now, believe it or if you don't, whatever, this is the best shaky head ever invented. This is the Gamakatsu tricky head. And I'll link this in my Tackle Warehouse link, guys. If there's one thing that you could do to help your shaky head fishing, get you some of these tricky heads. This is the best shaky head, period, on the market. Now, a lot of guys get offended when I say this. You do not want to use a shaky head that has the little key, the little, you know, the coil on it, the screw lock shaky head. Guys, throw those things away. Every expert shaky head fisherman in the world uses this type of a head, straight shank with the keeper on the shank right here. The screw head on there, it gives the bait, it doesn't look as natural in the water. And also I found that you lose a lot more fish on it. It is just, it's one of those things that's user friendly, but it's not the best head to use. So if you got the screw heads, guys, get rid of them. Get you a couple packs of these tricky heads right here. Now the reason this is so good, number one, the head design on it. Head design, you've got just real cylindrical head. It comes through the rocks, comes through cover real good. And then the keeper, you got this tin keeper on here. This keeps the bait on it really, really good. But the most important thing about it is the length of the shank of the hook and the O'Shaughnessy bend. This is not a round bend hook. This is called the O'Shaughnessy bend. And this particular style of bend right here, it will increase your hookups tremendously over just a regular round bend hook. So it's the combination of the three. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna tell you about this, I'm gonna show you how to rig this, but another thing is this is a 1/16 of an ounce tricky head. This is the best size of head for a shaky head, a 1/16 of an ounce. You don't want, all you guys out there that are throwing the 1/8 ounce, the 1/8 is okay if it's windy or something. Don't ever go above 1/8 ounce in a shaky head. There's no reason to use a 1/4 or 3/16. I use a 1/16 of an ounce probably at least 80 to 90% of the time. And the only time that I use an 1/8 ounce is if I'm fishing really deep, like 20, 25 foot deep, or if it's really, really windy out, like the wind's blowing 20 miles an hour. But the way the bait falls on a 1/16 of an ounce tricky head, guys, I'll show you, it's just a nice fall. The fish just can't resist it. Okay, now let's talk about rigging this thing. This is another big part of it. What you want to do is when you come in, don't come in very far, because you want to be able to seat this head of the worm in that little gap right there, because you want to be able, that keeper's got to be able to come out. So what you want to do is you want to put it up there far enough to where that keeper actually is right there where it's just barely showing. That'll keep that locked in real good. And then don't ever rig your shaky head like this. Don't ever just put it back into the middle of the bait and leave it like that, because basically you've made it too weedless. This is what causes most people to lose a ton of fish, is they just stick it right in the middle and they don't come through it. You're gonna lose a ton of fish when you do that. What you wanna do is come through and bring your shaky head completely out the side, and then go back and forth and create a channel there. Now this channel is really important in order to get you a good hook set, where it just comes free of that when the fish bite it. And most of the time, this is the way I fish it. I leave the hook exposed like that. And the only time that I don't is if I'm fishing around really snaggy cover like brush or something. And if there's some brush in the water or it's really snaggy, I'll just put the tip back in there barely, but that tip is barely in there. The hook is already all the way through and it comes out. But this is the way you want to fish it most of the time. Even if you lose them occasionally, the number of strikes, the number of fish that you're going to get in the boat by leaving that point exposed out there is just, there's not even any comparison whatsoever. So that's how to rig it. Okay, the next thing is the equipment with it. Now, I use the medium action. This is the Megabass whip snake. I either use this or the Megabass Addermine. I tell you one thing, guys, I did a video on rod actions, and there are some dudes out there that are like rod snobs. I call them medium action. They go, Randy, you don't know what you're talking about. It's called a medium power. Whatever, I call it medium action. Medium action spinning rod, 6 foot 11 inches to 7 feet. 7 feet's okay with it on a shaky head. So, you know, if you got a 7 foot rod, that's fine. This is the 611, the one that I use. Large diameter spinning reel right here. Straight fluorocarbon line. Do not use braided fluorocarbon. We've talked about this over and over and over again. Guys, your number of bites will increase, and everything about your experience in shaky head fishing will be, much better if you use straight fluorocarbon line. I use straight Seaguar invizx. We've talked about how to spool it up where you don't get the fluffs on it. Usually 8 to 10 pound test most of the time. On the 4-inch, occasionally I'll use 6 if it's real clear, but I probably use 8 pound test at least 75% of the time, and the other 25% of the time I'll use 6 or 10 pound tests. But that's the setup with it, straight fluorocarbon line. If you're one of those dudes out there that think I'm ridiculous for not using braided fluorocarbon, just try straight fluorocarbon. Go out, take about 3 or 4 trips with a shaky head, put you some straight fluorocarbon on there, see how many more bites you get without that freaking yellow line halfway down in the water there. Okay, one more thing on this as far as, working a shaky head. Shaky head is just what it sounds like. Throw it out there, let it hit the bottom, and once it hits the bottom, just shake it in one spot, for probably 5 or 6 shakes, and then just pull it like that. Take up the slack, shake it 5 or 6 times, pull it and drag it like that. You don't hop it off the bottom. I just like to shake it on the bottom and just pull it. And that's the thing to me that gets more bites than anything. And as far as setting the hook on it, you'll lose a lot of bass on a shaky head if you don't have everything right. If you're not using the right hook that I showed you, and if you're not putting the hook in the shaky head like I showed you right, and you don't have the right hook set, you can lose a ton of fish on a shaky head. I mean, I've seen guys lose 50% of the bites. So once you rig it up with the tricky head and you run that hook all the way through the worm, throw out there, you're sitting there, you're shaking the worm, all of a sudden you got a bite. Okay, you can feel the fish on there. When you get the bite on a shaky head, don't just become a live nerve ending and set the hook like that. It's like I'm shaking it here. Up, I felt one, he's swimming out with it. I'll even tell my guy fishing, it's like, I got one on right here. I'll let him swim for 4 or 5 feet with it, and then I'll just start reeling and pull it back, and I'll reel real fast like that. I'm not setting the hook hard. I'm pulling back and reeling fast. And actually, the fast reeling like that is what's penetrating that hook. If I set the hook real hard like that, a lot of times I'll force that fish's mouth open and you'll lose that fish. But guys, I'm telling you right now, if you don't do all this stuff that I'm talking about, a shaky head can be one of the biggest fish losing baits that you'll ever have. Okay, now finally, let's get into where you want to fish this during the springtime of the year, during the pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn. For me, it's all about secondary points. Secondary points in major creek arms are the #1 structure. Those are areas that bass will stage on prior to when they go spawning, and they stay on those secondary points waiting to move back into the shallow water, like in a nearby cove or something. They'll go back and they'll spawn in the coves, and then in the post-spawn, they'll move right back out on those secondary points. So a secondary point is a great area for shaky head fishing. And don't just fish the point. When you see a secondary point up there, and it can be flat or steep, it doesn't really matter, but when you see a secondary point, make sure you work down both sides of the point, like maybe 50 yards, or maybe 100 yards. Those fish will stage and they'll position not only just on the point, but on the sides of those points for quite a ways down there. So usually what I'll do is I'll pull up about maybe 50, 75 yards before I get to the point, and I'll start methodically working that bank all the way to the point across the other side. Catch a ton of fish with that. Another good area for shaky head this time of year is bluff banks. Bluff banks are really good for pre and post spawn bass on it. And then of course, when the fish are actually getting very close to bedding and they're looking for beds, that's when I'll go in those flatter spawning type areas, and I'll just fan cast out deeper away from the bank. Because what you have, excuse me, is say for example, you're in a flat cove and those fish are up spawning in 2 or 3 foot of water. You're gonna have some of those fish that are hanging out in like the 8 to 10 foot of water, either waiting to move up to spawn or moving down there after they spawn. So I like to go in those spawning coves and target that deeper water just outside of where I think those fish are spawning at. But anyway, guys, that's just some good tips for shaky head fishing. I think that if you utilize that, it's gonna add up to a lot of good fish for you. If I could give you the best piece of advice for all this is try that dang tricky head, make sure you rig it the way I told you, and also go with a straight fluorocarbon on your spinning outfit. Now, like I said, all you guys out there that are the braid to fluorocarbon fanatics and you think I'm ridiculous for saying that, just try it and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll quit throwing that braid to fluorocarbon as soon as you start doing it. So anyway, guys, hope it helps out. We'll talk later.